All right. First agenda item is approval of the minutes from the October 4th meeting. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
I will second it.
Who made the motion?
So,
Okay, do you have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, we have a.
oh no, sorry. I thought I was seconding it.
Okay, so Sue has the motion, Dave has the second. Any
Okay.
additions or
Doesn't matter.
edits? All right, all those in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And minutes are accepted. On to new business. So the first agenda item is specific implementation plan for construction of the multi-family development with Newcomb.
This is a referral from Plan Commission. There was a lot of discussion at Plan Commission in regards to park fees, dedication of land. That's all summarized in the information that was included in support. I've laid out options. Doesn't mean that these are the only options. There may be others, but the first would be that the developer pays park fees in lieu per the ordinance. The city could use fees to provide playground on private property. I think that is, I have concerns about that format and happy to share those if you want me to expand upon them. Or the city to work, there's likely to be a lot of redevelopment in this area in the next few years. There's a number of projects that have started some preliminary discussions with the city, and that we could work to try and identify. I'm not saying that this is, there's a lot of things that would have to line up for this to work, but to try and identify a park in this area to serve multiple redevelopments as opposed to trying to put a small playground on each development site.
All right, what thoughts do we have on this? I have to share.
Well,
This is across the street from the Marriott Hotel, is that correct?
Correct.
yeah.
Okay.
I just, for a city using park fees to provide playground on private property, that's a hard no.
I agree.
I agree.
I mean,
Nick, the mayor has his hand raised, so you're aware.
Maybrook?
Yeah, the city is getting $500,000 from this property. And the city has been getting money from the developments in this sector of the city. And we have yet to have a park there. So you look at the Glen apartments, or now they're called Deer Creek, 560 units there. That has been there for 20 years. They paid park development fees, park fees in lieu, and for 20 years they have gotten nothing. And then we have a more recently Market West, and then Foundry Apartments again. Really go somewhere and you pay some money and get nothing in return. I mean that is just something I don't know how. Wouldn't even work in a dreamland. So that's what city has been doing, and I think that has to somehow stop. So I don't know how we want to handle it, but we have been promising that we will have a land, we will have a park there, and I know there is some effort at least to have some small park there, but you can't have 173 units here, or possibly 173 units with a lot of kids and not have a park. I think this is something which we have to work on. We can't just, we have to treat all people all around the city uniformly. We can't just have something in one part of the city and not in the other. And this part of the city has been completely neglected, and that has to stop. So I think we have to show that if you're getting, either you get that park development fee and give them something, or you don't get the park development fee, or you put in escrow. So I think what has been happening here is really, really very unacceptable. So, and the parks, they build the community, they build the relationship among the parents and among the children. And in this case, maybe it will be the grandparents who will have their grandchildren visiting them. So I think this is maybe PRFC is not the organization to sort it out. Maybe it's up to the city council, but it has to be fixed. We cannot just let it go on forever. So if you are paying something, you get something in return. In this country, you don't pay something and get nothing. That just doesn't work. So I don't know whatever you want to do here. So in this case, the way I see is that let's say he pays $500,000, and so if we can find a mechanism that you put a park, this playground, my main interest is the children, and I think yours is too. And I know Nick, you have young children too. So what I would like to see is that at least some playground structure and cater to young children, and then if the city was to pay it and find some way that it's not used only for that property. I know Matt said that they don't have the immunity or all of those things, but they can be all worked out by paying some insurance money or whatever. But this development has to have something, not just pay $500,000 for nothing.
Matt,
Yeah.
if you could explain to me how the fee in lieu of park dedication ordinance works. I mean, I'm familiar with things in general, but I don't know the cities that well. But what I know in general is that, the first policy is that they provide parkland when they do development. Is that the way it works in the city?
Yes. And there is a fee in lieu of which the city can choose or not choose to accept.
And so in a situation like this, where we don't have much land nearby to develop as parkland and we need land, then maybe the thing to do rather than accept the fee in lieu of is to accept parkland dedication so that we can use some of the monies that have been collected in the past so that we can develop that park space. If we were to do that, how much land would they have to dedicate?
It's really a question for planning staff that I unfortunately I'm not prepared to answer on. Typically in these multifamily developments, to meet the density requirements based on the density of the proposed development, the acreage to support parks is often greater than the acreage of the site being developed, or it's such a large portion of the acreage that it would negatively impact the proposed development.
And I assume then that we could take a portion of the land that would be needed and also take a portion of the fees in lieu of, correct?
Correct.
So
I understand what the mayor is proposing, and in that he wants to see a playground at each of these multifamily apartment style developments, whatever you want to call them. The challenge with that is say in that Beltline Greenway area, we end up 15 years from now with 6 apartment buildings. And we have 6 playgrounds to serve each of those 6 developments. We're gonna have a lot of people asking, where's the green space? Where's a place where we can throw bases down and run around, or throw a football around, or those other amenities that people want to see in a park. And there isn't a perfect solution here. I just think that if we put 6 postage size playgrounds at 6 individual developments, we're going to have a lot of negative feedback on that 10 to 15 years from now.
Well, that's why we have the community park, Lakeview Park, and we got 6 large parks for the playgrounds and all of those things. And then you need a neighborhood park, and this is probably will be smaller than neighborhood park, but this particular developer has some land right next to him. It's not quite 3 acres, you said in your memo, but that land possibly could be used for a park. So I know then city would have to pay for it because the cost of that land is probably quite a bit, and he's paying $500,000. I think we have to find a solution, even if we don't have an ordinance now, but I think we need to have an ordinance. If there's a certain size of development, there better be a playground there. And we need to find a mechanism how to pay for it. But so I don't think this is really contradictory here. We have a larger park like we already have, and then you have the parks to address the needs of the children.
Matt, can I ask a question?
Certainly.
So when there's a development, they have a choice of paying a fee to the city or putting in a park area themselves. Is that correct?
They can dedicate land to the city for the development of a park, or they can pay a fee in lieu. They don't get to decide that. The city makes that decision.
Okay, so when they pay a fee in lieu and the city accepts that, then in a sense is the city accepting the responsibility of, okay, we're going to take this fee and we're going to provide the park instead of you providing the park.
Correct. And what's happened over the past 20 years, we haven't acquired land to serve as neighborhood parks where these developments are occurring. And the area west of the Beltline is the mayor is on point with his concern. The city has failed to serve those residents west of the Beltline with parks. The challenge is the value of the land is extremely high, and elected officials tend to balk at the price of parkland when you're competing with commercial and other types of development where there's much more financial incentive to develop that property in a different way.
So would it be to the advantage of the city because it's so expensive to do this, to say, no, we're not going to accept the fee in lieu, you're going to have to provide some park space to the developer? I mean, would that be to our advantage?
I think it addresses the issue. So the challenge with this is that this would be the first instance where the city's going to say it. And it's not to say that the city can't do that. It's not something that's been done previously. And I think the developer is going to point to previous practices and say they're being treated unfairly. And I agree with your sentiment. I don't know that how that proceeds.
Well, I can tell you how it's going to proceed. The developer will say, you know what, then this becomes an untenable project. Right. And so part of the issue is that because there's a scarcity of land, any developer is going to look at trying to maximize what he can get out of it. And if he can pay a fee in lieu of providing, all right, so the development is much more valuable than paying a fee. So he's going to try and pay a fee almost every time because that allows him to maximize his development. Right. So that's the issue that we run into.
Well, I think obviously we know that that's why they're paying the fee, because it's to their advantage.
Correct.
But I mean, it's also to our advantage because you're saying the land is too expensive for us to purchase. So I think it would be to our advantage to say, well, I'm sorry, we can't afford that. Do you really believe that the developer is going to walk away and say, well, gee, I have to give up this one spot of land, so I just can't afford this. I'm going to lose on this project. Do you really think they're going to lose?
Yes, they will walk away.
All right.
There is, unfortunately, there's a fine line here, right? And we don't know where that fine line, we don't know where that line is. In the case of this development, this guy is squeezing an apartment building into a small parcel of land, right? And he's because of construction costs and all, he's trying to get a maximum return on this post stamp. And
Well-
if he has to give up acreage for a park, that minimizes that tends to minimize what he can get from a profit
I
perspective.
would just make one more point about that too. If you notice, if you look at the new developments as opposed to the older developments, I mean, the new developments leave absolutely practically no green space in between their buildings anymore. You know, I live at Deer Creek. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but at least we do have, you know, there's a courtyard or whatever. But if I look at, you know, some of the newer ones here in Greenway, boy, there's, you know, it's just building to building. So, you know,
Again,
even with that, you know, people with kids don't have any green space. And it's not just kids, you know, like the park we were looking at, you know, there are a lot of people that work out here, and they walk that bike trail, you know, so not only families with children, I think people working are going to enjoy being able to have some place to, you know, stop for a lunch or stop, you know, on their break time, you know, to sit and have a coffee with a friend or something. So.
But Joe, and I think to to Mark's point, in terms of just pure economics, if there's a fairly substantial percentage of the footprint that has to be dedicated to public land, you know, they're upside down in their economics of developing this, and they're just going to say, well, we'll go somewhere else because this becomes an unprofitable, or it can't be a development that makes sense financially. So it's a juggling act. Do you want development to take place? Presumably, yes. But in doing so, you have to be willing to accept that there will not be the ability to obtain green space from a number of these developments. Otherwise, the development won't occur. I don't know if, Mark, you agree with that, or
unfortunately, that's the reality of where majority of Middleton is right now. Right, you guys remember we talked about the last meeting about Bell Farms, and one of the things that they did was that we're getting acreage there because there is enough acreage there that the developer can dedicate property and still develop the rest of that parcel to make his economics work. In a situation like this, the developer can't. It's just too small. This is infill. It's not like greenfield, right? This is an infill development, and we need to be very judicious in what we require for these infill developments. It's just not practical for an infill to dedicate so much property for a park.
And there's a couple of years ago, if I recall, there was another development that was discussed over in this area. It was more of a higher rise apartment complex. And the developer came to one of our meetings and actually offered to dedicate a parcel of land as part of the development. But the parcel of land was smaller than, if I recall, the Baskerville Park, which I don't know if you know where the Baskerville Park is, but it's big enough for a slide, a swing set, and a sandbox, and a couple other little riding things for little kids. And you know, I've been to Baskerville Park more times than I can count because I live right down the street from it. And you know, you get to a certain point where it's that little parcel of land loses a little bit of utility as your kids get older, and you're gonna your park needs grow with your kids, right? So you no longer need just a playground. And I remember we rejected that offer of land because it was so small that they couldn't even fit, you know, you might get a swing and a slide. And you know, it was only going to be really of use for really small children. And you know, I kind of, you know, my kids are a lot older now, that playgrounds don't have as much of an appeal, especially for my older one, but parks still do, for the green space, for the sports, for the running around, for, you know, they're like, how she uses parks is a lot different now. And my concern is if we're going with each development's going to have a little bit of a postage stamp, and all you're going to put there is a playground. It's not going to grow with kids, as kids live there. Now I understand these are apartments, largely apartments, but some of them are also probably going to be townhomes and condominiums. But other people use the parks too. And if we're just focusing on playgrounds, you're losing out on a lot of the portion of the city who will use that park. And I think that, also the more playgrounds you put up, we've got a playground replacement plan, right? Then we've all of a sudden got to replace those playgrounds every so many, it's probably 25, 30 years, but that's still added onto it. And I'm kind of thinking long-term for the benefit of the city, going with, thinking, can we identify a location over there for a larger park where more people can get utility out of it? And, for the workers that work out in the Greenway area, the business parks out there, for the people who live in the apartments and the townhomes out there.
So one of the
that's why-
things,
Go ahead.
go
Mike.
ahead. Well, one
So
of
that's
the
why
things
next-
planning,
Okay, I will go ahead
Sorry,
now. So
Mayor.
that's why next we have the community park, neighborhood parks, and then we need the smaller parks because of the land. We have like you mentioned that you have Baskerville Park. It
Mhm.
worked for you, it worked for your family. And then we have a Hillcrest, which is not a very big park. It's working for that whole neighborhood. So I think we need the whole nested network of these ones. We can't just have there are some areas where you can't have a larger parks. In this part, we could have had larger park. It just somehow, I don't know how and why it didn't happen, but it should have been because when those Deer Creek or Galena apartments were developed, there was plenty of land. It could have been done, but I don't know why it wasn't done. So even in this case, if we don't really do anything, why should we ask for this particular development to pay money when we are not giving them anything? Yes, the developer gains, but the people who will be living there, they lose. And it's the people who will be renting, they will end up paying, not the developer, because developer will be gone from there. So I think we
So here's the
need
reason, Gurdeep.
some sort of solution here. So
The reason they're paying is because that's what the ordinances say. That's why. So if you don't like the way the ordinances are written, then ask for a referral to L&O and get it changed. But in the meantime, the developer has to do either one of two things. It has to dedicate land or it has to pay a fee in lieu. And on top of that, they have to pay park development funds. That's what the ordinances say.
well, there's a difference between the ordinance and state statute. So I think I'm going to get this clarification from Larry. I don't think that unless you have some plan where you're going to spend this money that you can collect those fees. I have to see that he did make this clarification, but I have to find out more about it from him. So I think just because you have a city ordinance, and if it's not in coordination with the state ordinance or state statute, then you can't do it. I know we have been doing this, but it doesn't mean if we have done in the past, we can and should be doing it now. Yes, I agree with you. And I will see that whatever it needs to sort it out should happen.
But I also, going back to the fee, if you're collecting the fee in lieu of, then what I feel like what the city is saying, we will take the responsibility of providing the community in that area with some green space. So if it makes more sense to say, well, gee, we've taken fees from 6 different developments for one larger park instead of a lot of postage stamp parks, and that would be a choice.
just to chime in on a couple of points here. So planning staff has reached out, and what we're trying to do is in potential greenfield developments and there's very few that are going to happen in the city, but we're trying to proactively identify where the parkland in those greenfield developments should be. And I kind of wonder if there isn't a similar process that we need to look at for redevelopment of identifying as these corridors. The University Avenue is a corridor that's going to redevelop. We know that there's going to be redevelopment west of the Beltline, that we don't try and identify some land where we want to place parks. And that's a touchy subject because it's whether it's greenfield or redevelopment, it's land somebody owns, right? But I don't know how we address this issue that Joan identifies, because it is an issue. And the other thing is, I can assure you, in my multiple conversations with the city attorneys on this issue, we are in compliance with our park fees from a local ordinance standpoint as well as state statute. The mayor is correct in that the law has changed, and I can forward the mayor the memo from Matt Fleming that identifies all this in terms of what the changes mean and how they impact our use of fees. But one of the benefits that a developer pays fees for is they buy into our park system. We also have an obligation to provide them parks, but part of the fee structure is designed to support the overall park system. And so that when we do park development projects, that we identify as a citywide benefit. So when we use park fees to redo the Lakeview Park Shelter, or we use park fees to develop the CXC project, every development should have a stake in that, and that they're buying, essentially buying into those projects.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean that they don't get anything. I have looked at that statute, and if there's something more, which is more newer from Matt or Larry, I would be more than happy to look at it. But I think we have to find a solution. I mean, imagine you have deprived the people for over 20 years in a certain part of the city, while the city got that money and used elsewhere. I mean, it's just you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. That has to stop. So we can't just keep on doing this. Well, I'm going to stop there. So I think, this meeting may not have found a solution, but as a city, we have to. You can't just take the money and don't give them anything. This should not happen.
So Gurdeep, I think the thing that you're missing here is that there has to be an ability to give them something. And in this case, and in many of the areas for redevelopment west of the Beltline, there's nothing that the city can do, right? We scrape together a little park off of Market Street, which is basically, we are repurposing what had been considered conservancy. It's not that the city has decided that it can, or that it won't do it. It just doesn't have the ability. Because in order to get a park out there, in order to get a park anywhere, it either has to be dedicated by a developer or it has to be purchased by the city. If it's supposed to be purchased, that means that there has to be a ready, willing, and able seller, right? And it has to be, the city has to be ready and willing as well to make that transaction work. Well, west of the Beltline, the commercial aspects of the property outweighs anything that the city can do in terms of trying to make it a park. That's the economics of the situation. It's not like the city has decided that it's going to deprive people out there. The opportunities have not been there. You have been on the council for how many years? You were part of this problem. And I understand your conversion here. But the reality is that there's not a whole lot of land out there to acquire.
And
I have been fighting for it for 5 years now, and I think we got to do something. Matt, how much is this particular developer has a part of the land which he's willing to put a park on? What is the size of this? I know you said it's less than 3 acres. 3 acres isn't written in a Bible that you need a certain size. I mean, it's better to have something than to have nothing there. So is that a 1.5 acre or 2 acres, or what is it?
My understanding is he's not proposing any parkland as part of the development.
Well, that's not what he's proposing. How much of the land which is available there?
The land that's being developed?
No, he has two parts. One part he's putting apartments on, and then there's the other part, which he's not doing anything with. Okay, maybe I can check with Abby, so.
Yeah, I'm not aware that he has other property. I thought he was developing everything that he had.
So-
Okay, I'm going to check on that, so.
If we don't take parkland and make him pay the park fee in lieu of, and we don't develop park in the area, and he comes back and he says, you know, it's been whatever, I forget the statute, 7 years or whatever, and you haven't developed a park, I want my park fees back. We would give him those park fees back, and the residents would have no park, and the developer would have more profit, and we would have a bunch of residents who are rightfully upset that they don't have any parks serving them.
Absolutely.
So, you know, the last thing we want to do is to set ourselves up for that. And I think Mark's absolutely right that finding a parcel in this situation is going to be damn near impossible. So we're kind of at an impasse on this, in my mind.
So Matt, what do you need from us then at this point?
Well, Plan Commission has referred this to PRFC for discussion related to this issue of park fees, that the developer is proposing to pay park fees in lieu per city ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah, well, you could make a recommendation that we need a land, we need a park rather than the fees in lieu, or whatever you like to say, so.
What's the required plan for the development, Matt?
I don't have that information. I'm gonna peruse these Plan Commission minutes to see if there's anything in there that says that.
What would be sufficient? I think the other way to look at it is what would be sufficient lands to put in a reasonable park in this area.
Yep.
Most of our parks, most of our playgrounds take up somewhere between 4,000 to 7,000 square feet.
7,000?
4,000 to 7,000 square feet
So a tenth of an acre?
is the playground. But I think my concern is that is a playground enough, or as some of you have alluded to, that other people may want more than just a playground.
Something's better than nothing.
And you could also have a double of it, and the playground and the green area, sitting benches and all of that, so. Yeah, double it, make it 14,000 square feet.
Any other discussion?
If we were to go back to the developer and say, we're looking for 10 to 15,000 square feet of parkland, what do you think? I mean, best guess, what do you think the reaction is going to be?
Take a look at the site.
Yeah.
Take a look, bring the site back up.
I mean, they'd have to reconfigure their buildings in order to make that happen. The little courtyard they have is gone, and they'd have to carve out a little place, and I don't even know if there'd be a good place for park over there.
At the Plan Commission meeting, this highlighted, I hope you can all see this, but Newcomb is not opposed to the park, but it would need to be private.
Yeah, that's not really an option for the city.
He's identified a location for where a playground could be. I agree, Mark, that if we put in a playground, it needs to be available to the public. And I guess the preferred method would be that the city owns the land that the playground's on, but I'm sure there are also other options such as leasing to the city, or there's ways to figure that out. But I think that the private developer is not going to have a playground available to the public because of The city is afforded recreational immunity. A private development is not, so he can have an agreement in place with his residents, but he's not going to allow the general public on. And I think if the city invests and puts a playground, we have to ensure that the public has access to it.
Well, try to work on that solution so that where it could be available to public. So I think whatever it's talk to Larry or Matt. So, but it's my contention is that all children in this city should be treated alike. Doesn't matter what part of the city they live in, and all citizens in this city should be treated alike as much as possible. That's my position, and that's what I have been trying to do all along. So Matt, then you could work out, talk to the developer and see if you can work out some solution then.
What solution are you asking for, Gurdeep? I don't see that there is one here.
Well, the
Right,
solution is, yeah, Mark, the solution is that this developer has proposed to put a playground, and we want to be able to make it where it's available to everyone. That's the solution.
Okay, so what you've just said, so the developer is saying that I'm not going to put a park in here unless it's private. And what you want to do is you want to tell the developer that he can't have a park unless it's public. So now you're at an impasse. Where are we going to go from here, Gurdeep?
And the reason that Matt is saying that why it can't be public on a private property is because the city has the immunity and the private person does not. And what I would like to look into is that if that's possible, that we could have both. That's what I'm saying. So,
And I'm going to tell you that from an attorney's perspective, they would never advise you to do that. The city is not going to give, the city is not going to provide liability coverage to a private property.
No.
it doesn't hurt to
No, it
ask.
shouldn't.
So unless you ask, you're not going to find anything. So.
Well, Gurdeep, I'm glad that you've gone to law school.
It doesn't hurt to ask, okay? So, I mean, if you don't ask, you don't get anything, so.
Since we're supposed to come back with something, I would
We're
suggest,
not supposed to, just wait a minute, we're not supposed to come up back with something. There can be no action that can be taken here, and that's foreseeable, right? Just because planning has referred this to us doesn't mean that we need to make a decision on this. This is something that can't be done, then you just say it can't be done.
The only thing that I would add to that, Mark, is that by not saying anything, we also miss our opportunity to weigh in. And I'd advise that if the commission's concerned that the green space should be provided, you have the ability to state that.
I think that's my thought, is that we need to say, we need to see some public parkland here. And we would ask the developer to go back and look at what they can do to provide us with something of that sort.
So that's your motion.
There's no motion.
Well, he's making a motion.
I'm bouncing it off the rest of the committee.
Okay.
I just don't see how economically it'll be feasible for the development to take place if we need to have as little as 4,000 square feet for a tot lot to put a swing set and a slide in. In particular, this unit is designed, as he said, principally to have retired people. There aren't going to be a lot of families expected to be in there. Maybe that's not relevant, but the point is, where are you going to get the acreage, and what are you going to put on it, and to who is going to benefit from it? I don't see it as possible, frankly. I don't see logistically and economically how that could work. That's how I feel about it.
I think you're right. But
I agree with that. I think you're right.
Hey, Matt, what is that? We've been through this before. Who owns that parcel to the, I guess, the south there?
This one here,
Yeah.
that's
Huh.
Newcomb.
But he's not buying any, he's not putting anything on that right now. Is that correct?
No, this is the lot, this is the site that he's developing. I'm sorry, I had the wrong one.
Okay.
This is the parking lot that's across from the Marriott that he's developed.
So it's that whole parcel.
That's my understanding.
My understanding is he's doing half of it, and the half was proposed to be a commercial development, and he's not doing that. So, but you know, I don't know. I haven't checked with Abby lately, so I just came back yesterday.
I thought that he'd submitted updated designs that showed the entire site being developed.
Oh, no.
Do we have the most current site plan available?
I'm gonna pull up Plan Commission from last week.
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
2 buildings.
You and Abby and Newcomb had a meeting about the area which he was not developing and to put a park on that one. And where is that area?
Abby and I had a meeting with him to express that we wanted to see a park as part of the development, which he was initially in favor of. He's followed the discussion that PRFC has had on the Market Street Playground and has submitted this without the park amenities that we discussed.
Okay.
So I'm just curious. So the developer is developing this project. How is it that they have determined that it's going to be retired people? What kind of study do they do? I mean, how do they get that information? Does anybody know?
That's their own marketing, right? So you may remember, was it Cardinal Crest or Cardinal View, whatever it has just been built out on Parmenter Street. So the developers are doing their own market research, and they've determined that, you know, seniors are a viable business opportunity.
So that's sort of who they're kind
So
of
that's right. They're targeting senior housing.
targeting. Yeah. Okay. I see.
They're targeting senior housing, but there's not going to be any restriction. And in some time frame in the future, we could have families in there with kids.
Mhm.
In fact, I would imagine there would be, and even the seniors have grandchildren. We have 3 grandchildren, and we had only 2 children. And those grandchildren have to go somewhere too. So, and in our case, we are lucky. We got 3 parks right within a walking distance. But I would want all the people and all children to be equally lucky.
Well, then why don't you just tear down the entire city and replan it how you'd like? About the only thing that I think the committee can do is request that the developer put public parkland in these plans. But you guys need to understand that he's, if he comes back and says, no, it doesn't work, then we don't really have a lot to go on, right? The only opportunity that we would have is to get the council to say, you know what, we should reject this because there's no public parkland. I don't think that there would be enough support from the council to say, yes, we should reject this because there's no public parkland.
Are you making that motion, Mark?
I'm offering it as an observation.
Okay, well, so is somebody going to second that observation?
That wasn't a motion.
I'll make a motion
Okay, Dave will make a motion.
that we recommend the developer redo his plans and provide public park space on, for sufficient space to have for whatever staff deems necessary to serve these apartments.
Is that a stormwater pond that's at the bottom of that map there?
It looks like it. I think that says bioretention basin. But I don't have my magnifying glass out to quite. Let's see if I can.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is there's a lot of room in here in this parcel. And it looks like it could be reconfigured to put some parkland in there if the developer was a little imaginative. But again, I hesitate to say it's required because it may make this project not feasible.
Well, you're only requesting, and I think there's nothing wrong with doing that. So
That's
I think
all we're
a good-
doing is we're requesting that
Yep.
I think is all you're doing is requesting that the developer take another look.
Yeah,
And see if there's a way that he can provide public parkland in here.
that's
As
the
a point,
motion.
as
So
a
Dave has a
point of
motion on the floor. Matt, can you read the motion back, which you have written down?
motion by Shaw to recommend that the developer include public park space in updated plans. Did I miss anything, David?
I just left it up to staff in terms of size.
So that is our motion. Do you have a second on the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, Sue seconds. Do you have any further discussion on the motion?
Can I weigh in that I don't feel comfortable as staff being the one who determines what is the appropriate size?
Certainly.
Thank you. Amend the motion.
Okay, let's amend the motion to, what do you think's good, Matt? 10,000 square feet?
I think that comes down to, is PRFC comfortable at this location with a playground and you're gonna get about the same size that the playground is then in green space. And I think that's probably the most realistic ask we have based on all the factors. I just personally, professionally, we have to figure out green space in this corridor moving forward. And that's not necessarily Newcomb's issue, but I'd like to find a way that everyone that redevelops out here, that it is an issue for them, that they should want to be providing that for the residents. And we're a little bit behind determining how to do that best.
Part of the problem here is we weren't really planning so much for green space for apartments when this was primarily apartments. I mean, it's really office and not so much apartments and not so much green space needed. So Newcomb is the one who's changing the game here, and Newcomb's going to have to come up with a solution in my mind.
Well, Nick, was it you that said Baskerville was fine, but your kids have evolved away from that because they're older and looking for different park activities? Was that you that said that?
Yes. Yes.
So
I'll also state that I've had more complaints about Baskerville Park from residents than anyone in the city.
But would it just intuitively, it seems rather than having, let's say, 3 developments with 3 small 10,000 or 8,000 or 6,000 square foot tot lots to combine that into one park that would be 3 times larger than the 3 small parks combined in that area.
So can I just pause? We do still have a motion on the floor. And this
Oh,
is
I'm sorry.
Dave's motion's on the floor.
Okay.
And he amended the motion. Is that correct? Okay, and Sue, did you accept the amendment?
Oh, me? Yes.
Yeah, okay, so we have a
Sorry.
second to the amended motion. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of Dave's motion, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right,
Thank
motion
you.
carries.
Guys, really appreciate that.
All right. Agenda item number 2, award of proposal for trail solutions for the asphalt pump track at the by Pleasant View.
So a little bit of background here, that this is a proposal to design the asphalt pump track. We had a lot of trouble with this. There are basically 2 companies out there that construct asphalt pump tracks. And most of these are being built, design build. And state of Wisconsin does not allow cities to do design build projects based on state bid law. And so, I kid you not, we've talked about this with the attorneys and Inba Trail Solutions over the past 2 years, trying to map a path forward. And what we came up with is that rather than hire one of the companies to design it and then limit our bid field to the other company, Trail Solutions is going to design it with input from one of the 2 companies. And then we're going to put out the bid and hope that both companies bid on it. Because this is newer work, I'm sure 5 years from now, this will be an easier process, but it's been a challenge to get to this point. Matt Fleming's been involved throughout the project and has reviewed this proposal, and I would recommend its approval. Happy to answer any questions or clear up anything that I may have confused you on.
Okay, discussion?
The other thing that I will share is the city of Madison is currently under construction of an asphalt pump track at Aldo Leopold Park. Their city council waived bidding requirements for the project to essentially allow a design build project. Larry was not comfortable with that as the city attorney. So this is where we are on this project. But if you wanna see what these look like, I was told that Aldo Leopold is ready for pavement and that's probably happening in the next 7 to 10 days.
Discussion on the proposal? All right, hearing none, I'd be willing to accept the motion.
Just a question, Matt. Was this part of the capital funds that we're using for this? Is this something that we had segregated as part of the bike park out there?
Yeah, the city funds for this are coming from park development for the pump track, and it's being matched by a Dane County grant that was awarded to the Capital Off-Road Pathfinders. So we budgeted, I want to say it was last year or the year before in park development for $150,000 to the asphalt pump track.
Okay, so it's not new. This is something that's a couple years old.
Correct. It's just we've been, as everyone's aware, the CXC project has kind of been delayed, and we needed the road and parking lot in before any of the subsequent work could take place.
Right.
Okay, I will move that we accept the proposal for Trail Solutions to design the services related to the pump track.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Looks like last discussion item is discussion on fundraising.
So I thought we had a short meeting tonight and could take a little time to talk fundraising. So what I want to kind of throw this out and get feedback, but there's been a lot of discussion that I've had with some of you, that I've had with community members on how we can make projects viable by fundraising. And a number of park systems do this. A lot of them have 501c3 foundations that are friends of the parks or something to that equivalent, that when a project is occurring, one of the ones we've talked about is a universal playground or an all abilities playground, that there is a group of residents that work to support projects like that through fundraising. And that could include, each project could have items that could be donated towards or supported by fundraised funds. But I kind of wanted, before we get down this road, there's a lot of different examples and policies, and each community kind of has something that fits how they do that. And I wanted to see is there interest in looking at this, and what are the concerns moving forward, so that we could start looking at policy or a program or some type of structure. And then the last thing I'll throw out is there a subcommittee or an ad hoc committee that wants to take a deeper dive or a further look at this issue?
So I'll start, and hopefully this will clear it up really quickly. I'll move that we defer this. And the reason for that is I want to give you the opportunity to look into this thing. I think there's something called PARC, P-A-R-C. We've gone down this road. The Park Committee, our Parks and Rec Committee, has gone down this road before. My understanding is that the city already has in place some type of tax-free structure to use for this, for fundraising. So something that Penny Klein did before she retired. So
I think what you're referring to, Mark, is the Maple Group, and that's an endowment, like an endowment fund that's created that really is looking at estate giving and long-term maintenance or endowment support of the park system, but that it doesn't contain the structure to say, we want to, put a new playground in this park and we want to raise funds to enhance. So the city's going to contribute 40,000 and the neighborhood wants to kind of do a fundraising to add some amenities or increase the size of the playground.
yeah, and I think that we built it with that flexibility that you could donate specifically to projects, not just the endowment.
I will take a look at it. Because
we had that discussion, right, about, building endowments one thing, but what if people wanted to donate to a specific, this happened with Lucille Taylor, right? If Maple was available, she wanted to specifically do something for that park. And so I think the mechanism was that we would structure this so that we could do both.
Okay, so Mark has a motion to defer to a future meeting.
I'll second that. That's Jim.
Jim seconds. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. And that looks like that is all for new agenda items, so I'd accept a motion to adjourn tonight.
So moved.
All right, do you have a second?
I'll second it.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we are adjourned.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
All right, thanks.